Hey everyone, welcome to our small footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. Today I'm going to do a bit of a bits and pieces of everything in the kitchen day. So I did get asked on the most recent video whether I would do some of those, multi-day videos and stuff again, not just the single subject, and that's definitely on the cards, especially when I first come back from a grocery haul. But at this point of the month, we do a lot of just single item things that we're trying to use up what's left in the most efficient way possible and make the food stretch. But today's a bit of a pickup mix day. So we got the rescue kittens during the week, yesterday, day before, whenever it was. And so one of the first things I'm going to do today is make some chicken stock so that we can use some of the product from the chicken stock for some wet food to mix through their dry food, just to encourage them to eat, and the dogs eat it as well. So one of my first things I'm going to do this morning is get some chicken stock done. The kids need some more of the oatmeal that I made the other day that I put a video out on. They liked that one, so I need to make some more of that. We had tacos and hamburger patty type stuff for dinner last night, so I've got some taco mince left, so I'm going to make some chaffles with the taco mince for lunch for Darryl and I. I'm going to mix up a batch of the sandwich bread that I also put out in the video recently of. What else do I have planned today? I also, so because I'm making stock, I've pulled some bolognese out to defrost, and I will make some lasagna soup for dinner. So we'll have the fresh bread for the kids to have with it, and then I will make a small batch of pasta to cook in the soup, because the lasagna soup is bolognese with a whole lot of stock, basically a nice really wet bolognese, and then we cook the lasagna noodles in it. So I've got that on the cards for today. I think I need to make another batch of yogurt up, and I still haven't done the granola, but I probably won't do that today. We'll see how we go. So yeah, I'm just going to get through a bunch of stuff, and so I'll bring you along for the day for one of my long-winded bits of everything in the day type videos. It's supposed to be cooler today. There's a lot of breeze, which is lovely, and I think the high was only supposed to be like 33, which would be fantastic. Darryl has already gone and fetched a load of water and is getting his second load of water, so that'll be nice to be a bit cooler while he's doing that too. So yeah, anyway, let's get this stock started. Alright, for stock, I use my great big buffalo pan. So you can use any pressure canner as a pressure cooker, but you can't use any pressure cooker as a canner. So this buffalo canner is multi-use. It is stainless steel, so it's great for cooking in as well. The Presto is aluminium, and I don't have a problem with cooking non-acidic stuff in aluminium, but I prefer not to cook anything that has any acidity to it. And if I have this available, then I tend to use the stainless steel one. I also have a small Presto pressure cooker, but it's a bit smaller than I want for this batch of stock. Now, because I'm making this stock predominantly for the animals, and I'm low on aromatics anyway, I'm not going to put any in there. Sometimes when I make stock for the dogs, I add all sorts of things like sweet potato and zucchini and all sorts of things that can go into their dog food, but because we're going to share this with the cats as well, I'm going to just not do aromatics with this one. So it's only going to be a fairly small batch. I may not even have enough to can in this. I might. We'll see how we go, because I'm going to make that lasagna soup. But we don't have a huge amount of bones either, so because we haven't eaten a whole lot of things that had chicken that had bones in it this month. So this is looks like legs. Yeah, so it must have been a batch of chicken legs that I've cooked. That's the leg bones. And then we've got some, this looks like wings that we've had, so we kept the wings, and this actually looks like wings as well. So this might even not be from this month, it might be last month, but this is all I could find in the freezer easily, so it's not a huge amount of carcasses there. Actually, I think I've got a bag of chicken carcass that came in the hamper. I'm going to find that as well, because that has plenty of meat and stuff on it, which is really good considering we're setting this for the dogs. So give me a sec. I'm sure there was. Found it. So it was a bag of what I thought was chicken pieces that came with the hamper one of the times, and it's actually just carcasses. So I had opened it, realised it was carcasses, and went, So I'm going to use it in the stock instead. Of course, there's a absorbency pad on it. that off. So it's just a bunch of chicken frames. So I'm going to add that in there as well, which is good. Gives me a bit more bulk in there. Now I'm going to add a little bit of apple cider vinegar, which helps to pull the nutrients from the bones. So a little bit of apple cider vinegar over the bones. And I'm going to add a bit of salt, not too much, but just a little bit because it helps as well. And that's all I'm going to add to this one. Now, normally chicken stock, we'd have onion, we'd have carrots, we'd have celery, we'd have zucchini, we'd have all these sorts of things. But because I'm going to use some of this for the kittens, I'm going to leave it really nice and plain, and we'll just season it when we use the liquid for it. So now I'm just going to put water in it to cover the level of the chicken, and then we're going to turn it on. Alright, so I've put about 15 litres of water in there, I suppose, about half the pot, just over half the pot, and we're just going to get this going, and all we'll do is we'll bring it up to pressure. I'll put the pressure weight on, I'll cook it for 90 minutes under pressure, and then it will be done. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some bread. So I'm just going to use the 3-loaf recipe that I used the other day. I'm going to bump the sourdough starter up a little bit and drop the yeast a little bit because my starter's pretty active. So we're going to see how well that does. So I'm going to do 850 grams of water, and then I'm going to do 200 grams of starter, and we'll see if we can get this to work today. So, and my starter's floating, which is always a good sign that it's nice and active. So we've got 850, 200, we're going to put in some yeast, and I'm just going to put a sprinkle through this tiny bit left in here, which ended up being about 4 grams. I don't really want to open another one just to do this. That should be enough. It's only 10 o'clock in the morning, so I'm going to put that bit of yeast in there. I am going to add a bit of sugar. Just need about 50 grams of sugar, and we're going to add 50 grams of ghee. And then we're just going to add our flour and some salt. And then I'm just going to mix it up. And while that's mixing, I will feed my starter. Alrighty, so I'm just going to get the container for this. And then I'm going to put it in my container now. Someone did ask in the comments about this container, and I did reply, but I'll just mention it again. It's a Cambro container. It was sent to me by a viewer via Amazon. I think Susan sent it to me. They're not cheap, but they are fantastic. They're food grade, like catering ones. Nisbet's here in Australia does sell them for not a bad price, but their shipping is horrific. But I did get told that if you call them, if you're only ordering something fairly small, then they will do better job on shipping for you. I just haven't got around to it yet because I wouldn't mind a couple more, some in different sizes. So anyway, this is my dough. It is a little bit wet. Do we need to add more flour to this one? Let me have a look. No, I'm okay with it. So it's a little bit wet, which is what in the video I mentioned that we want it slightly wet because it's a slightly enriched dough, so we want it to have that moisture to it. You just don't want it to be excessively sticky. I'm okay with this. It's sticky but not excessive. So lightly oiled my container, putting it in there to proof, and then we'll deal with that later. I still have half of the cinnamon mixture from the previous video, and the kids really liked that, though I would like to flatten it out more and get more of a swirl. I reckon it would be more effective. So but that is done for now, and we'll put that aside to proof and come back to it later. Alrighty, next job is breakfast. So I've got the waffle maker out. I'm going to let that warm up. I'm going to get the leftover taco mince out of the fridge. Alright, so it's just straight up beef mince cooked with some taco seasoning. Let's move you a little closer for this one. Alright, so all I'm going to do is do these taco, Big Mac-esque taco chaffles that we've seen. We've tried these ones before, they were really nice, a couple of times actually, and what we tend to do is eat them with a bit of salsa and sour cream. So this particular one, I'm not mixing up a batter type thing with the cheese. All I'm going to do is sprinkle it straight on the waffle iron. Put a layer on the bottom here. We're using the Mexican blend cheese here because I find that it works quite well for this particular method. So it's just the Mexican style Costco, and then we're going to put a couple of tablespoons of this taco meat on, like that, and then top it off with a little bit more cheese. Nice messy way to do it. But it's not like I don't clean my kitchen a dozen times a day anyway. Like that, and then we're just going to close it and let it go. Alrighty, so once they're cooked, that's what they look like. Like that, crispy with the mince in them, and then I'm just going to stick it in on the thing. Now, last time I made these, I actually add pickles to them, which was really nice, but we've run out of pickles. I will definitely buy the bigger jars at Costco this time, and if I can get cucumbers cheap, I will, and we'll can some, but I don't know if I may have missed my window on getting cucumbers cheap this year, so I don't normally buy them too heavily in bulk because they don't last very well, and we hadn't been huge on eating pickles for a while there, but with the ketovore style eating, they've definitely added a nice sort of a fresh crunch to things. A bit like the salsa, it's not strictly carnivore, and it's not, but it works to make me feel like I'm getting some variety in my food. So, second one in. They leak a lot of oil, so you just have to be aware of that too. Getting the last of the chaffles cooked, so I'm also going to make some of the iced coffee that I make, like a coffee frappe type thing. So I've got one of the cubes of frozen cream in here, as well as filled it with ice. And there's going to be 2 serves, so I put 2 tablespoons of instant coffee. This is just whatever Nescafe I get on special. I think this one came from Costco, so it's a slightly different container than my normal, but whatever I happen to have. And then we're going to get some sweetener, wherever that is. This Naturally Sweet is the one that I use most regularly. I actually have spoken to the lady who owns Naturally Sweet and got a coupon code for guys to get 5% off if you want to buy it, because this is a nice local Australian owned company, Naturally Sweet, and they do erythritol, monk fruit blends, they do some xylitol, things like that. So, and they have some of the flavor drops as well, the zing ones. So I put around about 40 grams of this in for our 2, which is around about a tablespoon per drink. So, equal parts coffee to sweetener. And then I'm going to add some water to that to make it blend better. This one is done. pull this one out. And I think I've got enough cheese out for one more. Right. All over the place as per usual. The stock hasn't got up to temperature yet, so I'm still waiting on that to put the weight on it. What do I need? I need water. About 300 mils of cold water into that as well. And then we're going to blend it. And then we've got iced coffee, just need to go and grab cups for that. This is nearly done. And then, so I'm going to sit down, have my iced coffee, have my jaffles, and then I'll come back and the dough's probably be ready. So there we go. We got our quarters of our crispy cheese and taco mince. We got some salsa and sour cream and iced coffee for lunch, and then by the time I finish this, the dough will be ready. All right, lunch is done, breakfast, lunch, whatever. The dough's not quite ready. I forgot that I did predominantly sourdough in that, so it's going to take longer than if it was straight yeast. So the next thing I'm just going to quickly do is mix up some of the sugar-free jelly to go in the fridge for the next few days. This has worked really well to be a after dinner dessert with that whipped cream that we've got left over. So a good use of that whipped cream, but also just a really nice low carb sweet treat. Lots of people have reached out and said that if you do the boiling water and then you mix it with things like yogurt or cream or whatever, you end up with like a creamy dessert, and I will give that a go. But at the moment we've still got one of those cans of whipped cream open at the moment, so it needs to be used. So this works well for that. So I've got two here. I've got a grape one and a vanilla berry, and I'm just going to mix these up. Kettle's boiling. I just need to grab a whisk. All right, so standard jelly, cup of boiling water each, and then dissolved, and not quite a cup of cold water afterwards, and then it's done and it'll go in the fridge, and we'll have this for the next couple of days. So one more thing just sorted. All right, next thing I'll do is some of the blended oatmeal type stuff. So I've got some oats here. Might work out some weights so that it makes it easier on me next time. So if we did a cup of oats weighs around about 130. So 3 cups would be 390. So if we say 400 grams of oats, all right. And then last time I did a cup and a half of yogurt for those 3 cups of oats. I'm just going to wipe this off because I want to stick it in the yogurt jar. Again, let's figure out our weights here. So they actually flavoured the yogurt with some berries because they were using it on its own. So it's slightly berry yogurt. So if we work out that a cup of this yogurt weighs approximately 260, so half would be 130, so 263, 63.90. So we're looking at about 400 grams of each. That make it nice and easy. 400 grams of yogurt, 400 grams of oats. Makes sense. This time I'm going to use some coconut cream in it instead of, because I don't have date water. And again, we ended up with about a cup of the date water. Worked quite well. So what does a cup of coconut cream give me? 200-ish, yeah. So ratios so far are nice and even. Obviously I can't put that one back in the yogurt now. I'll just put that to the side. We've got now, because it was berry flavoured, I grabbed the mixed berry white chocolate cheesecake protein powder because this is really quite nice. It's got very much a berry flavour to it, and it's also going to give sweetness. So I'm going to put a scoop of that in there. And then the nut butter. So the nut butter is the Biscoff flavour, but I think that's going to go well with this anyway. It'd be like having a biscuit base to the berry cheesecakey type thing, but also this is going to give it some more protein. It's going to give it some more texture and things like that. So I think a nut butter is important. So maybe I need to make a plain nut butter to use for these as well. But for the moment, so what we did with the last batch was 2 sort of heaped tablespoons of the nut butter. So let's see what that weighs. About 40 grams each, so we'll go with 80 for that. Maybe we'll bump that to 100, make it nice and simple. 100 grams of that. I need to write all this down obviously too. And then we've got the date caramel for a bit more sweetness. And again, I'm just going to use 1 big scoop of it for this one because we've added that coconut cream, which has a bit of its own sweetness, and we've added that protein powder as well. So, and that is about 50 grams, so that's probably a good amount of sweetener too. So, all right, I'm going to give my hands a quick wash. And we're going to blend this up. Now it's getting a bit stuck, so which means that there's not enough liquid in it for it to blend. I don't really want to add the other 200 grams of this. I'd prefer to add a bit of water to help with the texture, but not, we're trying not to bump the fat too much in it with the thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a cup of water as well, which ends up being, should be about the 200 odd grams, 225. And I just use that dirty cup to get that bit of yogurt out of it as well. So, alright, so that's what we've ended up with. Seeing Sonnet standing here, I'm going to get Sonnet to have a taste test. Can you grab a spoon for me? One of the blended porridges, but with the yogurt had some berries in it, so I used some of the berry protein powder and stuff in it. See if it's sweet enough. It's good? Alright, so that's sweet enough. So now I'm going to figure out what I want to put it in. They still haven't washed the jars from last time, so the jars seem to be not a great choice. So we might end up just putting it in one big container and they can take scoops out of it into their bowls each morning. Does that sound alright? Yeah? And if they wanted me to do it single service again, they need to keep the jars clean. Alright, and we're going to make a chocolate topping for them, which is the only downfall of having them in these containers that they serve themselves. I can see them going for the, trying to get all the chocolate topping rather than just sharing it. But anyway, we got half a cup of coconut oil. I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of coconut cream. I'm going to add some date caramel as the sweetener. We'll do 2 heaped tablespoons of that. We might need to add a bit more sweetener because instead of using melting chocolate, we're using cocoa powder because it's cheaper for a start, but also I can control the sweetness. But we need to figure out what the sweetness level we need. I need another measuring. All right, I've got 1/8 cup here, which is around about 2 tablespoons, which we'll start with, and then we'll whisk it up. We will heat it to get that. We might not need to. The coconut oil was liquid because it's so hot, but to get that date caramel to blend in properly, we probably need to just warm it up slightly, which is why I'm mixing it in this pot. So I'm just going to warm it very slightly, get that all blended, and then we should be good to go. I've managed to splatter myself everywhere and it does not want to emulsify for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the stick mixer out. I could have done this in the Thermomix, which probably would have worked quite well, but I don't have another clean bowl at the moment. So I'm going to use the stick mixer to get it to emulsify. Alright, it's thickening up and emulsifying, but it's probably a little too thick now. But I'm concerned if I add more liquid I won't be able to get it to, I don't know, it seems to be working now. Got that first lot of emulsion done. Alright, now let's see. That tastes plenty sweet enough to go on top of the oats that are already sweet anyway. So all I'm going to do is drizzle it over the top of each one, and so each of these containers has 600 grams in it, which is 100 grams per child. I probably could have done less chocolate, to be honest. Definitely could have done less chocolate, so probably could have done half the amount that I just made up. So this will be a bit of a extra treat for them. Have that there, but there we go. So those two done, same as the blended oats but in a berry flavour, 2 days worth, 100 grams each in it. So we'll cut it once it's solid. I should be able to just sort of mark it into 6 and they take 100 grams each, and that should be good breakfast for the next couple of days. And this might be the way that I do it from now on. So that was a berry flavoured one. I'm just going to keep on experimenting with different things, and now I need to clean my shirt. So this, I just turned the stock off and the dough is almost ready to go. So I'm going to clean up, move on to the next thing. Alright, dough's ready, so it's pretty much doubled. I managed to find one of the exact same shirts, but it doesn't have chocolate all over it, so that's cool. So the dough is pretty slack. It's very warm today, so we will see how we go with this, because it's looking a little wet, but we will just deal with it as we go. But this is what I was talking about the temperatures can affect the texture of the dough. This is the same recipe as yesterday, but because it's a bit warmer and a bit more humid today, it is like just wetter. Same process, use some flour to get underneath it and we'll bring it together. I think I must have mismeasured something, which is probably why it's as slack as it is, because we've ended up with 3 sort of 650. Don't know. Anyway, gonna get these sorted in tins. Alright, so the stock has finished and it's cooled down enough to make it sort of easier to handle. The bread has proved not fantastically. It ended up very, very sloppy, but I think we've got it because we got. I'm preheating the oven for that one. So now I'm going to strain the stock through a colander. And we'll put 4 litres aside to go for dinner. And then I'll see what's left and we might can that up as well. And then we will puree what's left for the animals. So because we pressure cook this for 90 minutes, the bones are so soft you can break them between your fingers. I'll show you when we get to some bones. So this container here is a 4.5 litre container, so I find the easiest way, though it's pouring messy, the easiest way to figure out quantities is to use these containers. They're faux Tupperware from Kmart. And I'll just keep going, and so show you this bone. So this is just a bone, a leg bone or something, and once it's been pressure cooked you can actually just crumple it in your fingers into just a mush. So the Thermomix will let me turn this into a paste, and all that marrow and everything will go into the animal feed. So you can just squish it into nothing, and that's what we turn into dog food. So I'm going to get a bowl to put this aside so it doesn't go through the colander. And we'll put all the solids in this one, and we'll use a little bit of stock as needed to puree it in the Thermomix afterwards. So I'm just going to go through and strain all this first. Alright, so I should have enough to make it worthwhile to do one batch in the canner. So that's what I'm going to do. These are Fowler's 27s, which are 850 mils. Now, some people chill their stock so that they can take the fat cap off the top. I like the fat cap on my stock because fat's flavour. So all I do is I'm generous with my headspace, and I make sure that we take the temperature up nice and slowly, and then I find that it's fine. So I only fill it to just on the shoulders, and then take the pressure up really nice and slowly. If you want super clear stock, you need to strain through a much smaller colander than what I'm using, or double strain it. But again, it's not something I'm overly worried about. So all I'm doing is the end little bit of liquid I'm putting in with the scraps, because the scraps will need a little bit of liquid to puree up anyway. This should be enough. 7 jars is the sort of, you might fit 8 of this size jar, but 7 for the Presto. So if I can get 6 or 7 jars, then it's a full load, and that's okay. By me, it makes running the canner worthwhile. Got 6 jars, which is fine. That's enough of a canner load to make it worthwhile, and the rest will be turned into dog food. So let me get some vinegar to give these a clean. All right, we're just going to clean the rims. Now, Fowler's jars, the rubber ring goes around the edge here, so it's not the top that is the big sealing point like on a 2-piece lid jar. It's more that side. So, all right, we've got rubber rings, which is the single-use part of Fowler's canning, and you want to get them on there and make sure that there's no twists. Some people prefer to put these rings on when the jar is empty. I actually find it easier when the jar is full, but I know that a lot of people don't. And when I first started canning, I didn't realize you could put them on beforehand. So I always did them when the jar was full, and I did cop a couple of hot jars on myself. So dunno, I kind of just got used to doing it with the jars full and have pretty much got the technique down pat, so I just keep doing it. But a lot of people won't put the rings on when the jars are full, especially when they're full of hot liquid. But so then now, because I just used my hands on those rings, I always like to run just a quick clean with vinegar around them, just to make sure that I didn't have any fat or oils on my fingers. And then I need some lids. Alrighty, and we've got the stainless steel lids. These are the reusable portion, though some people will reuse their rings as well, much like using the flat lid, reusing the flat lids on 2-piece. It's up to you. And then these have clips to hold everything down. Now, the clips, when they're polished up, are really nice and shiny, but our environment really doesn't lend very well to them keeping shiny, and they don't come in contact with anything, so I'm pretty slack. Now, the guidelines for Fowler's is for single clip only, but the guidelines for Fowler jars are also Fowler's method only, so not pressure canning. Now, I've used these for pressure canning ever since I got them, and I know plenty of people who do, and they're perfectly fine, but I do find that a double clip is necessary. I find that if I single clip when I pressure can, then I have a lot of seal failures because they shift. Unless you're getting these on exactly straight, or also the fact that nearly all of mine are second hand, and there is some slightly different sized lids and clips. So this is a 3-inch lid and it's a 3-inch clip, but there is 3.5-inch clips and things like that, and they do have labeling on them, but you can't see it because mine is so dirty. So it's possible that I'm using clips that are for glass, which is slightly different size, or 3.5 and things like that. So I find putting 2 is the best bet. All right, we got the pressure canner sorted. I've got a rack in the bottom and about 3 litres or 3 quarts of water in the bottom. Now I'm going to turn this on to warm up because the stock in the jars is hot. So we want the water in the canner the same temperature. So we're going to get this warmed up before we put the jars in. All right, so the temperature of the water is nice and hot. So we're going to put the jars into the canner. Check my seal is in the right spot and everything else. Now the top of my lid is filthy as per usual because it sits on an open shelf, but the inside is clean, and that's the main thing. So we're going to slide that in, and then we will wait for the steam. Next job is to get the food pureed. So we will just start by getting some solids in here. Like that. Pouring a bit of the liquid in as well, just to give it something to help it blend. So there we go. Just into a smooth paste. All those bones, all the chicken that was in there, all the goodness in the bones is now just a wet food for the dogs and the cats. So I'm going to get a container to pour this into and keep on going. All right, there you go. So a big container of wet food that will be fed to the dogs and the cats. We'll give the cats the lysine powder in this, so they should take it, and we might see if we can get them to take their worming tablets in this too. The kitten's very handleable, the baby kitten's very handleable at the moment, so we could possibly get a worming tablet down its throat, but the other 2 not so much. So hopefully by coaxing them with something like this as a treat, that will help. So I'm going to put a lid on this, I'm going to put it aside to cool for a bit, and then I'm going to get it into the fridge. I've got the stock here, I need a lid for that one as well. And next I need to make the pasta for that soup. I suppose I'll probably put the soup on first and then make the pasta. All right, bread's done, so we'll get that out first. It's not quite as big as I would have liked. As I said, the dough just ended up being a little bit wet, but that's fine because we're going to slice it up for lasagna soup tonight, so that will be fine. And the cinnamon bread looks fine, so we're just going to put that aside for the moment to cool a little bit. I should brush it with a bit of butter. So I will just grab a little bit of ghee, put it in a cup so that I don't contaminate the jar with the bread, and we will do this to keep it nice and soft because the kids seem to prefer it soft. I quite like it crunchy, and once I get the sourdough working and I'm eating it more, I will probably leave one unbuttered because I like the crunch. And then the cinnamon bread as well. There we go. So that was about like a half of this third of a cup, a sixth of a cup of ghee, like a tablespoon each sort of thing. I'm going to put that aside to cool, and I'll get it out of those on a rack soon. Now, next thing is the soup. So I've got the pressure canner on a burner here so that I can keep an eye on it. I use the Camp Chef for a lot of my canning because it's more powerful. But with this stock, I want to bring it up nice and slowly, so it's a bit more control on this. So we're going to move the cast iron. Plastic stuck in there. Move the cast iron, and we get a soup pot. Alright, I had to wash the pot that I wanted to use. So we got this pot, which is a good size for this. We're going to put the stock in it, except I've got my camera on the stock. Let me find something else to put my camera on. There we go. So I'm going to pour the 4 litres of stock into the pan and make a mess, as is the way. Alright, so we've got that in there, 4.5 litres of stock. Now I've got the 2 bags of frozen bolognese, well, semi-frozen, I have to grab them. Now I pulled these out this morning when I was deciding what I was making for dinner, which means that they're not really as defrosted as would be easy, but we're going to slide them into the stock. Oop. So as I said, this is bolognese that I had a video the other day on my bulk bolognese, and we turn that bolognese into lots of different meals. So this one is lasagna soup, which the kids adore. So there we go. Those 2 in there. Let me put these aside to be washed. Now I'm going to turn this on to a simmer till we get the bolognese defrosted. Turn this up a little bit. It's pressure canner. So we're going to let this come to a simmer. Once it comes to a simmer, we're going to simmer it for quite a while. Let that stock and the beef get in, flavors sort of emulsify, but also we want to soften that bolognese because it's a soup. So you want it a little less textured, a little softer, because that just works with it. So the other thing I need to do is make the pasta that will go in this one. Now I'm not going to do my sourdough pasta because for a start my starter hasn't doubled yet, but also it needs a little bit longer. It's not like a do it straight away sort of a thing. So I'm just going to use the basic standard Thermomix pasta recipe. So we're just going to search cookie dough and do pasta dough search. We got fresh pasta dough, and we hit start cooking and it gives us what we need to do. So I'm going to follow the instructions on the screen for this one and just do as it tells me. So we want 200 grams of plain flour, just like that. Then we're going to hit next. It wants 2 eggs. We always crack our eggs into a bowl before putting it into a recipe because they're fresh eggs from our chickens. So we got 2 eggs. Next, tablespoon of olive oil. Next, insert measuring cup and put lid on, and then knead for 2 minutes. Alright, so then it tells you to put it on a dough mat, bring it together, and allow it to rest for 15 minutes. So let me grab my dough mat. I washed it after the cinnamon this morning. And we're going to tip it out onto here. So it looks crumbly, which is how it's supposed to look. Tip it out onto here. Make sure we get all the dough out, like that. And we're going to bring it together, just like that. Into a ball and allow to rest. Now, There's only 200 grams of dough. I probably should have doubled it for the kids because it's going in the soup. They probably, 400 grams would probably be more than enough, so I probably need to make another batch of this. 200 grams. Yeah, not really. That's not going to be enough pasta for all of them, I don't think. So I'll probably make a second one of these. Now the canner has started to spout steam. I can see it just on the screen, so hopefully you'll be able to see it on the recording. So you want it to do steam for 10 minutes, and then we'll put the weight on. So it's been a few minutes, so it's got a little bit longer to go, and then I'll put the weight on. All right, so it's been 10 minutes, and actually the valve has popped up as well, which sometimes happens within that 10 minutes, sometimes doesn't. So I've got my weight, and I'm going to place that on. Now, this is a 3-piece weight. It can be used as a 5-pound weight, a 10-pound weight, or a 15-pound weight. I've got all weights on it as a 15-pound weight because we are above 1,000 feet here. So that is going to go on there. Once it starts jiggling, because we need to do it at 11 pounds of pressure or with a 15-pound weight for above 1,000 feet. Once it starts jiggling or dancing, I will bring you back and show you, and then I start my timer for 25 minutes. So I did my second batch as well. We're going to just do the same thing, bring it all together, and let it rest. So what we'll do is we'll just put them in here, we'll wrap it all up, and then we will let it sit until I'm ready to roll it out, which will be probably longer than 15 minutes, but it'll sit there. I realised that I forgot to mention what the kids were having for lunch. So they had the leftover taco mince as well. Some of them had it on wraps with some leftover salad from the tacos. Some of them had it with some corn chips and some salsa and a bit of the leftover cashew cheese I'd made them, so that's fine. I'm not sure what Darryl and I are eating for dinner. I'm making this lasagna soup. We could eat the lasagna soup on its own without pasta, I suppose. I don't know. It's all just a bit too hard at the moment. So we'll see. But this is mainly aimed at the kids. So, you know, they got the fresh bread, they got the lasagna soup, they got the pasta, and yeah, I don't know. But yeah, so I'll just keep on going and I'll keep on updating. So once your weight is dancing, this was dancing and I've just turned it down a little bit. You need to play with your temperature a little bit because you want it to be slow dancing, not tap dancing. So you want it to have a movement to it, but just a hint of movement, not a full-on tap dance. So let's bring it back up a little bit, see if we can get it into a rhythm. So once your weight starts jiggling, what you want to do is you want to play with your temperature a little bit. This is too fast. This is tap dancing. We don't want it to tap dance. We want it to slow dance. So we want to take the temperature down a little bit, and we want it to just slow down so that it only moves slowly. It's slow dancing rather than tap dancing. So I do have a pressure gauge there as well, which I can look at. It needs to be over 11 pounds of pressure, which it is. So this is fine. But the faster it's dancing, the more you're losing out of the pot, and you've only got that limited amount of water in there, and the more steam you lose out of the pot, the more that water reduces. Now this is only a 25-minute canning job, so realistically it's not a huge deal, but you do want it just to slow down. So that's not too bad. It's just slowly sort of spinning around. It could go a little bit slower, but you wouldn't want it any faster. So now I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes. This camera is going in and out, wanting to focus on stuff behind it. So I'm going to set the canner for 25 minutes and then it will be done. So during that time, my lasagna soup has come up to a boil. I'm turning it down so it goes back down to a simmer. All the bolognese has defrosted in there. So now we're just going to let it simmer with that bolognese softening in there. And then it'll get a lid on it. I don't know what time it is. It's 10 to 4. So this will simmer for the next half hour, 45 minutes while I get the pasta sorted and lead up to dinner time. All right, so the dough's rested and it's nice and malleable. We're going to cut it into probably 4 and do one at a time, 100 grams at a time sort of thing. So what I tend to do is I put the bits that I'm not using aside, cover them up, And this bit we're going to roll out a bit to use with the pasta maker. So all I do is I just give it a little bit of a roll like that. Thin out the very edges because that's the bit that's going to feed in first. We start on the thickest, we turn it on and we let it run. Once it's gone through once, I fold it into thirds and give it a quick sort of a smush out, and then it's got nice square edges, goes through at the thickest again. And then we start dropping. So I drop 2 at a time. Run it through. Another 2. And my pasta roller is a generic one. It's a stainless steel one, but it's not KitchenAid brand. So it starts at the biggest number and goes down to the smallest number. I think the KitchenAid ones go opposite. But so I want to end up on the 1 on mine. So this is going through at 1. And that's it. Then I just cut it. So I hand cut mine because I don't have a cutter for this, because I just didn't see the point, because I'd have to roll it all through like this and then roll it all through the cutter, and it just didn't seem to work. So I've got a pastry cutter and I hand cut these. So I'm going to find that for a start, but then just roll the others the same as I just did that one. So this is the pastry cutter that I use. I like the wavy edge, and this being the lasagna pasta, we're going to keep the pasta fairly short, and I tend to try and do some shapes with it so it's not all the same size, because it's going into the lasagna soup. So you can cut it even smaller lengthwise as well if you want, and then that's it. Now I normally hang this on my pasta rack, so I'll have to put that together just until I'm ready to use it, just so that it doesn't stick to itself too badly. Makes it easier to use. And I'm going to just random some of this because that's the best way for the lasagna soup. So I cut that one up. I'm going to get my pasta rack out, hang this, and then just go through and do the rest. So after the 25 minutes, I turned the burner off, and now it's come back down to nil pressure. So you can see on the dial that it's come down to nil, and the little spot that pops up when it's under pressure has dropped back down. So now it's safe to open. All right, it's 4:45, so about half an hour till the kids have dinner, or 5 o'clock, whatever time it was. So I brought the soup back up to a bit more of a boil, and I'm going to just drop the pasta in. Now I want to drop it in bits. If you drop it in a clump too much, sometimes it all ends up sticking together. So we're going to stick it in. It's slightly dried, which helps it stop from sticking together as well. Because this is tomato-based product, it does take about sort of the half an hour mark for it to get really nice and soft. So this will just simmer. I'll bring it up to a boil once all the pasta's in there, and then I'll turn it down to simmer for about half an hour, and that will be the kids' dinner with some bread.
Made more bread?
Yeah.
Can I make it with cheese?
Mm-hmm.
With real cheese? Oh, it's gonna be in the video, just sped up.
No, it probably won't be. I just didn't stop the camera because I'm busy. Just cut it out. Alright, so that's all the pasta in. Just going to stir it, make sure it's not all sticking to itself. And then it'll just simmer for a bit. So this bread will probably be a little bit dense, but it'll be perfect for having with the soup. So I'm just going to cut them each a slice. Nice sort of a thick slice. There we go. There's 6 slices. They can have a piece each with a bit of Nuttalex or whatever they want on it. And the soup is pretty much done. So all the pasta is now cooked. It's all silky and sorted. Now, the last thing I have to do is get the stock out of the canner. Now, I cannot find my jar lifter, of course, because that would make my life easier. So I am just going to have to use tea towel. There we go. Now, you can see there's a little bit of residue at the bottom because I didn't strain it through any cloth or anything like that, which we don't mind. But there's those 6 jars all done. Alrighty, this is the jars the next morning. So it's really important to give 24-hour, an overnight stop to these jars before you take the lids off. Part of having that rest period is part of the canning process. So the jars are under pressure when you first pull them out of the canner. The clips hold the lids in place while the pressure dissipates, and that's how you get the jars. So the next morning, whether it's a 2-piece lid or a Fowler's lid, you take your rings off or your clips off and you test that the jars are sealed by picking them up by the lid. And of course you keep an eye on them on the shelf as well, because you never know when a jar occasionally pops a seal, especially in my situation where all our jars are stored in open shelving in very fluctuating temperatures. But that's it. So that's the stock the next day. You can see it's got that little rim of fat. These are a little bit, the headspace is quite large on mine, but they don't sit on my shelf for very long, and part of that is because I leave that fat layer on there. I'm generous with my headspace. And because these jars narrow at the neck, I find that if I take the level too high, then they will siphon really badly because of that narrowing. A straight jar is much better for something that has a fat layer on top, but this is a good amount for us to use in most recipes. So the headspace is a little large, but stock normally only lasts a couple of months at the most on my shelf. So I normally make one big batch of stock every shopping period. So I'm not overly concerned. So that was the jars for the chicken stock. And that was everything for that day. So I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of the old style filming, and there will be more of that sort of thing after the next grocery haul. The single subject videos are more for later on in the month when I've got less food and less planning and things like that, and trying to just get stuff done. Also so that I can try and get stuff up on the website, though I'm failing pretty miserably at it. But that will happen. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.